Hello and welcome back to Everyday Writers, your one-stop shop for demystifying the writing process. We're here to be helpful guides on your journey to becoming a published author. I'm one of your hosts, Crystal McQueen.
I'm your other host, Jordan S. Keller, for joining on this episode of Everyday Writers. And today we're going to be discussing point of view, the differences between them, how to effectively use them, and what to watch out for while writing in these different styles.
Yep, so today we're going to talk about those three point of views and two main tenses. There's a lot of combinations you can do with these. Some genres will gravitate towards certain point of views more than others, but there's no concrete rules here. So whatever point of view works for you and your writing, that's what you should definitely use. It's going to help flesh out your voice and it's going to be easier for you to tell the story you need to tell. And in every case where like there's like a standard point of view in a genre, there's always an exception. So the three points of views really quickly are first person, second person, and third person, which third person can be either in limited or omniscient point of view. And some books will even flip back and forth across these.
And on top of the three different point of views, there's also two different tenses, so present tense and past tense. So collectively, we have eight different options when choosing your point of view. Crystal, your current book, Up Pops the Sun, it's a first person narrative. So let's start there. What first person book did you bring tonight?
So because I've talked about it in other podcasts, I brought Margaret Atwood's The Testaments. And what I really love about this book is the first time that you read The Handmaid's Tale, you absolutely hate Aunt Lydia. She's somebody who is definitely one of the bad, evil villains in that book. She does the most horrible thing to women. You think she's a feminist traitor, and then you read the Testaments and you learn all of the different things that she did, all of the different areas that she kind of sacrificed her morals in order to play the long game and bring Gilead down. And so I think first person really worked well in this because you got to see exactly how much Aunt Lydia was internalizing when she was having these disgusting conversations with these men who wanted younger brides or killed their brides or whatever. And I don't think you could have gotten that much. Like she couldn't have redeemed herself as much if she hadn't been in first person. So.
Was it jarring with the first book being in third person and then switching to the second book being in
Oh
first?
no, I was wrong about that. They were
Oh,
both first
oh,
person. I said that and then I was like, "Oh no, that's wrong. That's
I'm
wrong." No,
so
you
sorry.
that's okay. You do get Offred's first person point of view in the first book. Which I think that was really great because that made this book so much more shocking. So what about
So,
you? What's your
oh,
book?
yeah, so I brought Legend Born. It is book one in a four-book series. Book three just came out. It's by DC Deanon. It's a young adult science fiction novel, and most young adult books are told in that first-person perspective, which leads to some of the pros for writing in first person, is that you're so much closer to your main character. Everything you're seeing right through their eyes. It's your for me in a lot of first person books, I feel like that character is telling me exactly what happened in the moment. I'm right there with them. But that can also lead to an unreliable narrator at times because you're only seeing the world through them. You're only getting their reactions and their opinions about things. Um, so it's
Yeah.
just to watch out for.
So, yeah, so things to watch out for. This is actually something that I found out when I wrote my first short story piece is having too many eyes. I sat down, I picked something up, I was worried about missing my flight or whatever. So if you have too many things that are you kind of lose the story. Because remember that every single time that you're going through an experience, you're internalizing and judging different things. You know, should I cross the street with this person coming towards me? Are they scary? Are they somebody that I recently had a fight with? Do I not like them? You know, so there's always a bunch of different things that can be happening. So you got to build the world around you. And sometimes in first person, you can forget that. Another thing is filter words. So that's something that Jordan and I have talked about before. So if you're in that close first person, you don't want to be filtering it. You don't want to say, "I saw them leave. They just left." You know, because you're right there. You don't want to say, "I heard, I watched, I saw, I thought," because you're already in that close first person, and that's distancing. And then the last thing is projecting intentions. So a lot of times when you think somebody has sighed for a certain reason, you can say, I got irritated because they sighed for waiting on me for too long. You know, you're not, that's not what they're actually sighing about. You don't know. It's just what you think. So instead, they seemed to sigh because I was late or whatever. So that's some things to watch out with first person, but it's definitely what I like writing in. I feel like it gives me a lot stronger voice for my character.
Did you have to create a list of all the synonyms for like seem to? I feel like when I try to write first person, I'm constantly, they seem to know this, they seem to want that.
Um, no, but you know what? That would be a really cool exercise to be in a room full of people and go through and try to describe what the main character is thinking about each of those from a first person point of view. That'd be
It'd be
kind of
great to
cool.
do while waiting for the bus. Yeah,
Well, if you do that, read it on the next podcast.
be a great writing exercise.
I think so.
Uh, yeah, so moving on to our second point of view, second person, what's your opinion on it? It's such a different kind of style.
It is, but I personally written in second person. I enjoy it. And so here's a couple of examples of second person that you might want to check out. This is a nonfiction book by Mary Carr called Cherry. And 99% of it's written in first person, but there's a small section in it where she switches to second person, where she's talking about her battle with anorexia. And a lot of times people will write in second person because they want to make it a collective experience. You know, she's not the only girl who has experienced anorexia. A lot of these feelings may be common. And so, anyway, there's just a little tiny brief period that if you're not watching very closely, you don't even notice that she switches to second person. And then the other one, and this is a huge spoiler, so if you want to read this book, do not listen. Like skip to, I'll write the time on it, but just skip to the next part of the podcast. But the fifth season, and by N.K. Jemisin, she's an amazing writer. She's so good and so detailed in her world building. But this particular book actually crosses all three points of view. And so it'll be in first person, second person, and third person. And the way she did it is she wrote them from different points in the same character's life. So when she's talking in third person, it's when she's older and she's got all this experience and she's trying to keep her family together. And when she's talking in second person, you know, she's trying to deal with a different stage of her life. And then when she goes into first person, that's also another day, another stage in her life. And you don't learn until like two-thirds through it that it's the same actual character.
Ooh.
So it's a really, really cool book. If you want to experience the challenges and differences of writing in all three, this is a great book to read.
In that same breath of having the three different point of views, I've got a book that's written in the three different tenses, all from
Ooh.
the same character, but just the different points of time that they're referencing. So it's really neat to know that you can do that in either a point of view shift or a time sense shift.
Yeah. What book was that?
Well, it is. It's called Half Sick of Shadows. It's based on the Lady of the Lake in the Arthurian legends, and so the present tense is what's happening currently in their journey. Past tense are memories from her and her brother, and the future tense are the vision she gets. So very prophetic. Like Gwen will be standing. Gwen will be caked in mud. The water will be pouring through the windows, and there's no like notices for when the shifts are happening. You're just all of a sudden like, oh wow. Um,
I think that's a cool indicator that, hey, something's different. So you eventually get used to it when you're reading it, that this is what this means. But, you know, you and I had a conversation about this before we did this show about how I said, I've never read a book in future tense. And my husband said, all the places you will go by Dr. Seuss. Like you've read that book. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, okay, that is in
I
future
guess it's
tense.
true.
I guess it's true. But I wonder what it would feel like to write an entire book in future tense. Like, what would the plot be?
And when would you be so caught? Like you start writing in the future, when do you get to it? And like,
When does the future
yeah,
become now?
yeah. Okay, another writing exercise we'll have to try.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
you write second person. You've got some stories out in magazines, which we'll link down in the description down below. You mentioned writing in second person is writing a collective experience at times. Did you channel that while writing your short stories?
I thought it was actually better to write in second person because I'm not the only person who's ever had an old house, right? And so my recent piece that was published is called The American Idol. And it's I guess, the collective experience of people buying an old house and not really realizing how much goes into it. So all of the stories that are in there are experiences that people have with old houses, but they're not all my experiences. And so, like in that piece, there's a wisteria plant that's creeping into the house named Winston. Well, my friend actually named her wisteria that was creeping into her house Winston. There's another piece in it or another section in it where it talks about how could you buy an entire house without closets? Yeah, I did that. I was like, I don't know how I moved in and was like, there's not a single closet here to put clothes in. Like, what do I do? And so I think that that's why I wrote them in second person because it's not just my experience, it's a collective experience. And it's a choice. But
Your
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
No,
I
I
was going
was
to say your American Idol piece is what convinced me to stop looking at these old Cincinnati cottages when we were looking to buy a home because I didn't want the Winston, I didn't want the no closets, I didn't want the awkward furniture, and so you helped me out there.
I'm hoping that I can save other people from the mistake of an old house. Some people really do love it, but it's like you never stop pouring money into it. But kind of like some people don't like old houses, some people, actually, a lot of people really don't like old second person. Some publishers won't even read it. So like sometimes when you're looking for a submission, they say if it's in second person, they don't want it. So that's a challenge. But you said that you knew
Yeah,
of some, yeah.
I'm hoping our listeners can help me out. When I was in high school, I read a book called You, and it was a black book with red lettering. It was just YOU. And the first chapter starts with it's something like you punch your fists through the window and you pick the glass out between your knuckles. And that's all I remember from the book. But it was in second person. And that was my first taste of it. And I thought, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I never found any other second person until like probably 5 years ago when I started reading some fan fiction. And a lot of that is written second point of view. Yeah, so like you are the main character in these fan fiction worlds. And what I noticed a lot is if the you character had any like descriptor of like an eye color, a hair type, a favorite color, if the you reading it didn't share that with the you character, a lot of people would stop reading it because like that's not me anymore. So that was just sort of interesting to see how the second person can alienate or bring together that collective mindset.
Well, that's a good point because, I think about the collective experience of owning an old house and like a lot of our friend Jody, myself, my friend Jenna, like my sister, so many people have had old houses and like the stories I collected were from people that were like me. But I wonder if my piece will alienate some people who are like, I love my old home, and that's why you get armoires, and and then so there is that possibility of alienating your reader who doesn't experience it just like you do. So that's interesting. Never thought of that.
Another fun writing exercise to rewrite the American dream from the different side of it, like the person who does love it, who loves the armoires and the challenge it takes to keep them.
Convince Jordan to reconsider her purchase.
No, no, I'm very happy in my house. Oh,
Well, so we talked about second person, things to watch out for. And so, Jordan, you write in almost exclusively third person. I don't
yeah.
think I've seen anything in first person. So, why don't you talk about what book you brought for third person? I need to stop
So
covering my mouth.
I brought two third person books. The first book is third person single perspective, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. And the second book, and I get to show off my fun cover, Six of Crows by Leah Bud. I'm going to butcher her name, Babaru. But Six of Crows is multi-person, third person. So six characters all in that third person though. And the reason I like reading third person and the reason I prefer write in third person is because it that sort of separation between the reader and the character makes it so I've got a better understanding of what the character wants, what the world is, and I'm not just stuck to the one character, their one vision. I'm able to see a lot more and digest a lot more.
Yeah. Well, so I do like third person books. I don't write very well in third person, but I like reading them. And so one of my all-time favorite books is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And what I really love about this book is it's actually told from, I don't know, 7 or 8 different points of view. But my favorite part about it is it's a braided timeline. So the half the book is in a post-apocalyptic era type things, 20 years after a pandemic happens. And the other half of the book that's braided throughout it is what's leading up to that, all the decisions that were made that end up influencing the characters' lives in the actual pandemic. So it's a really cool way to do third person. And she does tell it from different points of view because otherwise you wouldn't understand how those characters' lives connected.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
so the other thing, and I want to point this out, is I know I've mentioned this book before. There's so many
It's your
great
favorite
things
book.
about it. And the reason that I bring Pride and Prejudice back up is because Pride and Prejudice is told in third person omniscient, and everything that Jordan and I have talked about just to this point has all been third person limited point of view. And so the difference between limited is you only get that person's perspective in that moment. Whereas omniscient is you can see everything that's happening around you. You know what each character is doing. You understand the intentions of what each character is doing. And it's much, much less common to see an actual omniscient third person today. What you most often get is the multi-character point of view to get around that because the biggest pitfall with omniscience is people tend to bleed into head hopping. And so, Jordan, do you want to talk a little bit about what head hopping is
Yeah.
and why we should avoid it?
So let me preference by saying there's nothing wrong with writing the omniscience of third person, but what the head hopping is an unclear change between your character's perspective. So if it uh, Jordan was writing her novel and she thought XYZ and then Crystal thought XYZ, so you know exactly where Jordan thinks, you know exactly where Crystal thinks. Where head hopping would you would remove that clarity, so it would be difficult to understand and know which character is thinking what. And usually you can get away with it by every time your point of view changes, you're in a new paragraph or ideally a new chapter. But so that head hopping is fusion between the which character is thinking, sort of driving that story. And of what makes head hopping wrong is that it can be difficult to attach yourself to a character's perspective. So if you're constantly shifting, it'll be difficult to take that driver's seat with the character.
I also think it kind of bleeds into you're giving the reader too much. They don't get to imagine anything.
Mhm.
So, if Jordan thinks that shirt Crystal is wearing is ugly, and I immediately think my shirt looks awesome, you don't get to wonder if the other character is really enjoying their shirt or if they wish they hadn't worn it. And I know that's a simplistic example, but it's if you don't give your reader the ability to imagine certain things, it can also get kind of boring. There's no mystery to it. There's nothing for you to uncover or unravel if you know what every character is thinking in every moment. But that kind of leads into some of the pros of writing in third person. And since that is your big
My
genre, why
wheelhouse.
don't you go through those?
Yeah, but like I mentioned, I love being able to get that wider perspective. Writing it, I feel like it's easier to world build, and reading it, I feel like there's a lot more like openness to world build. The narrator might know something about the world, the culture, the setting that the character wouldn't necessarily know. So you're not limiting that knowledge to the reader because of the character. And then writing in that omniscient point of view where the reader knows everything, you get to experience that dramatic irony where like the reader knows the truth about something and the character doesn't yet. And so you get to see them figure it out, experience that truth while you already know it. So it doesn't come as a shock to the reader.
Yeah. I actually love those books that have dramatic irony where you know that the character is going down a bad path and they have no idea. And you're like, "No, don't do that." But also they're still walking through that door.
Right. You see it a lot in Hallmark movies too, when the like after the third act breakup, you know, when the country boy does something wrong and the city girl only knows the one side of it, but the viewer knows what actually happened. And so if you need to study dramatic irony,
Well,
some
Bill and I
Hallmark
had a
Christmas
talk
movies.
talk about that because I was talking about like tropes and stuff like that, and how, I really like Emily Henry's books. I know that, she's gonna meet a guy and
Mhm.
she's gonna go through something traumatic and they're gonna have some kind of misunderstanding, but then they're gonna get together at the end. The structure of the book, but the breakup that always happens in that third act. I was talking to him about it and I was like, they always like blow up their whole life when a 2-minute conversation could solve
It's
this.
always a miscommunication. Yes.
And so anyway, he was like, "You think people communicate? I mean, that isn't that real life?" I was like, "I
No, it's
feel like
books.
if I loved somebody, it'd be like, hey, can we just talk about this for a
Yeah.
minute?"
Or like, I really don't like how you made me feel this way. Can you elaborate? Or hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I made you feel that way.
Yeah. Like, I don't want you to feel shitty. Don't make me feel shitty. It'd be great. So anyway, so we already talked about head hopping as a watch out for the third person. Another thing that is a watch out is deepening your character. So you don't get that interiority that you get with first person. So making sure you're rounding out your character's backstory, and rounding out their intentions without actually being literally in their head.
Mhm.
So that's something that you got to watch out for in third person. And
It's so much,
then,
sorry,
okay,
I was
no.
gonna say it's so easy to overwrite that interiority versus showing it, like showing their fear of doing something or showing like their enjoyment of something. Well, like you mentioned, it's just a lot easier in that first person to be able to show all that versus spelling it all out in a third person.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we're going to do a Jordan interview coming
Okay.
up very soon. But I just finished reading your book, Failing Gravity. And there's a scene in it where Roman comes back and everything is destroyed. And he's got this sidekick kid that, he's kind of been taking care of and that's his family. But he's being so mean to the kid. But you see him reluctantly, like, doing things to take care of him. And there's a moment where Roman realizes, oh my gosh, this guy actually is my family. And it's not being told. You see it through the little actions. Like, I wouldn't usually give you, alcohol, but here it is. Or I would usually be pissed that you drank all of my alcohol, but, I'm going to let that go. So there's just so many points that you show his interiority without him having to think, like when did Scrap become my
Yeah.
family. So I
Thank
love
you.
that part of it. Sorry, spoiler.
Scrap. There's a boy named Scrap.
There's a boy named Scrap. Um, so yeah, that is all the time that we have for this episode of Everyday Writers. Thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey, and remember to try out different points of views and find one that fits your style, not necessarily the genre that you're writing.
Speaking of the genre you're writing, there will be certain point of views that are more popular in that, but write to your strengths. If you're a better first person writer, write person. If you're a better third person writer, write third person.
Yep. And then read in your preferred point of view. If you want to try out a new point of view, read books that, do it really well. They're usually the ones that sell a lot of books.
And then, of course, join us next time for our next episode where we'll be discussing the ins and out of query letter writing, what to include, what can make you stand out, what to avoid. And we'd love to hear. I'm so sorry.
What? No, you're
I
fine.
don't know. I just got so nervous all of a sudden. We're going to be talking about query writing. I guess it just makes me nervous. I never like doing it. Please join us next time for it. We'll discuss everything you should and shouldn't include. Don't forget to click that subscribe button if you haven't. And if you know that book called You, please let me know what it is.
And if you do any of our writing prompts, please, please,
Yeah.
please tell us. We would love to read them. And also, don't forget, every single day is a good day to write.
We'll see you next
Bye.
time.